Hello and welcome to another edition of the Wrap Up,
Oh my
where
god.
I'm here with Sahal Abdi, Adon Moss, Kyle Brickman. I'm Oren Weisfeld, and welcome to our 2-hour live trade deadline reaction show, where we're going to be reacting to all of the deals that the Toronto Raptors made today, that they maybe continue to make in the next hour plus, and all the other deals as well around the NBA, especially in the Eastern Conference, and how those deals affect the Raptors. We will be talking about the James Harden, Ben Simmons blockbuster later on. We have to start with the biggest deal that is the Raptors deal, because this is a Raptors show. And that is Goran Dragic is expiring, a 2022 first round pick that is protected, for Thad Young, Drew Eubanks, and the Pistons 2022 pick. So just to clarify, the Raptors are probably going to move down about 10 spots in the draft for Thad Young and Drew Eubanks.
You can just call him Drew Banks.
Drew Banks.
Oh, damn, that works.
Yeah. So,
works.
Adon, since you're directly under me, why don't we go in a descending order?
Nice.
And why don't you give your initial thoughts on the deal? Yay, nay, hey.
I mean, leave it to Masai to acquire, like you said, acquire somebody that wasn't even really in our thought process. Like I put in my trade thing on Tuesday. I listed out a bunch of dudes that are small trades buyout options. And I looked directly in Drew Eubanks' eyes and then looked past him because I didn't want to tempt fate and actually acquire him. I've always loved Thaddeus Young. I wrote a piece on him last year about how he evolved as a player. He used to be this like grinding low post, basically OG Anunoby with like twice the number of shoulders that would just like destroy dudes and spin around. He was quite a unique player, and he evolved into kind of who we see Scotty today, a little bit of Pascal operating from the elbow, like great passer, and will fit really seamlessly in our offense in a lot of ways. I don't know what his capabilities are at 33. I don't know what his defense is at this point. Like he was a good defender. He hasn't played much this year. It'll be interesting to see how he's brought in. But you know what? Anything's better than having fucking Goran Dragic shooting hoops in Miami. So
Yeah, so Hal, what were your initial reactions?
Anytime you see a first round pick attached to a trade, it catches your attention. So at first I was like, I was going into this trade deadline like the only way this team was going to get rid of Goran Dragic was to add a first to the trade, to package out. There's no way a team's just going to be like, oh yeah, we'll take Goran, the guy who's showing up at Miami Heat games as a member of the Toronto Raptors, with no pick attached, with $18 million of salary. We'll just take him, no problem, and then we'll buy him out for you. We'll do all the legwork for you, all of that. No one was doing that. You had to attach something to him to get him out of here. And he is out of here. Most Raptors fans are probably happy with that. They did receive a second-round pick, which is likely going to be a high second-round pick. It is the Pistons' second-round pick. So most people are expecting it to be like a 10 to 12 pick drop-off. And then obviously you get Thaddeus Young and you get Drew Eubanks, who is now known, thanks to Adon, as Drew Banks. I'm going to make sure that sticks, by the way, Adon. So I'm okay with it. I mean, you get a rotation player back. Like for me, Goran Dragic was nothing. Like he had no value. He wasn't contributing on the court. So he was nothing for me. So attaching a first and getting an early second back and then getting a pretty good rotation player in Thaddeus Young. Remember, this guy's not going to come in and get 25 minutes a game. He may not even get 20 minutes a game. He may be in that 10 to 15 minute range, but the fact is he's probably going to be part of this rotation unless the Raptors, make another trade or buy him out, do something weird that we're not really expecting. Drew Eubanks, I'm going to be totally honest. I haven't watched a lot of him. I actually asked you guys like an hour ago, what the hell is, like, who is this guy? I remember seeing him in my 2K, association. I remember seeing his face. I don't remember what he's good at. I don't know what he's good at. I don't watch the San Antonio Spurs. And if I do, I'm usually watching guys like DeJounte Murray, Derek White, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm more focused on the pick drop off and Thaddeus Young. And Thaddeus Young, yes, not the greatest for spacing, but again, another 6'9" guy, long wingspan, who's probably a net average in this league, I would say, at this point. So I'm okay with it. I don't know why Raptors fans, some Raptors fans, are panicking. I'm totally fine with it.
Well, yeah, let's get to
yeah.
Kyle, because I know that he did not like the trade as much, which is good because we need to have this conversation, because I
Yeah.
think Kyle represents a lot of Raptors fans. So, Kyle, why don't you kind of talk about why this wasn't an ideal trade for you? And maybe, let's just go with that.
I think, first of all, like, I'm going to preface everything I say with it's impossible to tell like what the other options were. So it's hard to say like, oh, well, they could have had Rashawn Holmes or they could have had Derek White, etc. Like, none of us have insider information. In fact, when it comes to the Raptors, like, there are a few people in the world who have insider information. So I'll preface it by saying that, but I don't like the return for Dragic. It seemed like potentially there were other options out there. Thad Young, I get that he's a good veteran. He's not a good shooter, so he doesn't fix the spacing problem. He needs the ball a lot to be effective, in the same way that Scotty and OG and Pascal all, like, you need the ball, and Freddie, etc. There's already too many mouths to feed. And on top of all of that, there seems to be a lot of talk about like, this is a 10-pick drop off. This is a 10-pick drop off. Like, are we sure about that? Like, the Pistons, I guess right now they're slotted as to be picking number 1 in the draft, meaning that second round pick that the Raptors acquired is going to be the 31st overall pick. However, the Magic are motivated to tank. The Wizards just lost Beal. They'll be motivated to tank. The Spurs and Thunder and Rockets are all going to be trying to lose games. The Trailblazers are all going to be trying to lose games. Like, all these guys could be hopping up into that higher in the lottery, first of all. And the Raptors, like, let's just be 100% serious. Like, this could be the 15th overall pick. I get that we're all excited about the future of this team, but this could be like a 16 pick swing. And if we're talking about a swing that big, like, guys, I get that Masai's good at picking players late in drafts, but like, OG was at 23, Siakam was at 27. That difference in picks means the difference between OG and Siakam and like maybe Malachi Flynn, players of that caliber. So in general, not a huge fan of it. I don't think they're done. In fact, they created that trade exception. I think Thad Young, my working theory is Thad Young might be like insurance for Chris Boucher if they want to move on from Boucher and get a shooter like a guard. But as of right now, I'm not exactly satisfied.
You brought up one more thing to add, Oren, really quick.
Go for it.
Thaddeus Young, a lot of people don't know this, but obviously he was drafted 15 years ago, in 2007, a long time ago, Philadelphia 76ers. And I was wondering, I wanted a little bit more intel on him, and not just like recent, because we know guys deteriorate over time. He came into the league, elite athlete, fluid, obviously still has a long wingspan. But left-handed guy, tough player. But I think one of the most interesting and intriguing parts that I was reading that came up in a lot of his draft profiles back in 2006 was the fact that this guy's a genius. He had a 4.0 GPA. All of his, coaches at Georgia Tech used to say this guy's IQ is off the charts. Look, if you can add a high IQ player to this rotation, this is exactly what the Raptors need. Like, their bench has been a disaster this year, to put it lightly. And if you can add a high IQ guy into this rotation, even if he's getting 10 minutes a game, I'm totally fine with it, because the fact of the matter is it just feels like a lot of Raptors that are coming off the bench currently, they're just playing. There isn't a lot of IQ involved. A lot of the IQ comes from the core guys. If you could add that to that mix, I'm totally fine with it.
Can I just ask, this is a question to everyone. How will you feel if in these next 20 games, Thad is taking minutes and touches away from Scotty, or minutes and touches away from Precious? Is that something you're satisfied with? Is that something you look forward to seeing? That's sort of where I'm at. My answer would be no, not at all.
Well, I don't think he will take away from Scotty. I think he'll take the minutes that Precious and Kem are getting. And I also could, like, if there's another deal here, then that kind of changes things. If Kem or Boucher is dealt before the end of the day, and I'm okay with that. Like, as I've written about, we have seen how much this team could use that kind of player, where there's been games where Nick has to choose between Precious or Boucher as a 5 because he can't go small and he has no good options. So I think this is a better option. And so in that sense, I'm okay. Like, I don't think he's going to be taking away touches from Scotty necessarily. They're not going to run an offense for him. I think, like you said, that he has to have the ball in his hands. He does, but he can make really quick reads with the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
Like, put him into the short roll. Anyways, okay, before we get into the on-court fit, I just want to respond to a couple other things you guys said, because the on-court fit is a fascinating part, and we're going to get into it in more detail. But I want to just focus on the actual trade and the value, because there's two ways this could go. And Kyle, you hit on the risk that the Raptors took. Like, there absolutely is a risk that the Raptors slide back to 10th, possibly in the standings. And then their first round pick is, say it lands at 17. Wow, the Spurs get an absolute deal. But in regards to teams like the Wizards and the Pacers tanking, that's just not realistic, because remember, lottery odds don't affect your second round pick. It's just where you place in the standing. And there's very few teams that can actually, with this far left in the season, that are actually going to get worse than the Pistons. Possibly the Magic, possibly the Rockets and the Thunder. That's it. If you look at the standing, it would be next to impossible for all these other teams to pass the Pistons negatively. So I think that pick will be a very good pick, 32, 33, that kind of thing. I guess the question is, yeah, like moving 10 spots down in the draft, more or less. And there's also the chance that the Raptors keep climbing, right? I could see
Hypothetically.
the Raptors passing the Cavs, the
Could
Bulls.
go either way.
Yeah, it is risky, but we just don't really know. Moving down, let's just put it this way. Is moving down 10 spots in the draft worth getting Thad Young for a year and taking a flyer on Drew Eubanks for 2 years? Like, where do you guys stand on that, Aiden?
I just think, obviously, viewers don't want to hear this, but we need to know what's going to happen in the next hour and a half. Because if we freeze the trade deadline right now, I don't love it. Like, I think Thad will contribute, but it's like, is there not somebody on the bio market that could have kind of contributed in the same respect, and it wouldn't have cost us like our first overall pick? The other thing is, like, retrospectively, did Masai not have any other deals? And so, like, and so then it's the question is, would you rather just buy out Goran and get nothing for it, or would you rather get a lesser pick, kind of a bench, like, deep rotation guy, and call it a day? So I think there's like a little bit more detail to be filled out. But if we're just going to operate in a vacuum, like, I think it's okay.
It's not sexy, but like, yeah, Sahal, like, is moving down 10 spots in the draft for Masai, is that worth taking on Eubanks and Thad Young?
Yeah, I think it is, because I'm going to be totally honest with you. If Eubanks is kept and if Thad Young is kept, obviously we're talking hypothetically right now. We don't know what's going to happen in the next, 44 minutes. 3 p.m. Eastern time is when the trade deadline ends. And then sometimes there's like trades like 301, 302 that just get filed. So we're going to operate from the assumption right now that they stay. And I think the whole point of trading Goran Dragic, the whole purpose of it, was to get back a rotation player. And if you told me before this trade happened, look, the Raptors are going to attach a late first round pick and get back a high second rounder, I would say, what are they going to get in return? If they get a high IQ rotation player, even if he's playing 10, 15 minutes a game, I'm fine with it. I'm totally fine. Look, Thad Young is what? Is he 33 years old, I believe? 33 and a half years old. He still has very good feet. Like, in the San Antonio game Spurs I've watched, defensively, he still has pretty good feet. Like, he was known, like I said, as a very elite, fluid athlete when he came into the league. But, his point of attack defense has obviously taken a little bit of a downturn, which is normal. Again, 33 and a half years old. But his wingspan helps him out. Like, we've seen on the Raptors, when Scotty sometimes gets beat off the dribble, his wingspan and his strength helps him out. It helps him out get that last bump you need before going to the rim. And a lot of times that stops guys, or at least it impedes them, makes their shot a little tougher. And I'm totally okay with it. I like I said, I don't know how much Eubanks is going to play. He could join this team now and not get a minute for the rest of the year, or only play during blowouts. Thad Young, I'd expect that if he stays, he's going to get, a consistent 10 or so minutes a game, 10, 15 minutes a game. Who knows? He may get even more if he proves to be a good rotation player. Like I said, guys, the Raptors, people hate hearing this, but the Raptors have one of, if not the worst bench rotation in the league. Like it's that bad. So adding a player like Thad Young is not sexy. He's old, yes. But remember what the alternative was. Dragic was not here. He was not playing with the Raptors. He was not practicing with the Raptors. Like I said, he was watching Jimmy Butler courtside as a member of the Raptors. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. Like I'm high IQ rotation player. I'm all for it. I'm signing up. But this is going to be hilarious because in the next 45 minutes, if he gets traded or if he gets bought out, this whole conversation is going to be a lot different, right?
Yeah, Kyle, I know you have another point to make, but with that being said, and obviously we don't know the market, what it was, but would you have rather the Raptors just bought out Goran Dragic rather than made this trade?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think it's better than a buyout. I think it's good to get a contributor for a player who wasn't playing, who was hanging out in South Beach and getting like a tan, or hanging out in Slovenia and
Right.
getting a tan, whatever. Although I guess it's pretty cold there this time of year. My point is, like, there had to have been other options. I'm not happy with the fit of Thad Young. I'm glad that they got something for nothing. It's like, finding a dime. Like, I'm down to find a dime, but I'd rather find a $10 bill on the ground. Like, that's all I'm saying. I'm glad to get Goran off the team. I think they capitalize on an asset, but otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get to on-court fit, because there's a lot of interesting things to talk about with Thad Young, I want to do my little rant, my little spiel on this whole thing, because I've seen a lot of negative reactions to this trade, but yet we all agree that if the alternative was buying out Goran Dragic, we would all rather taken this trade. And so that's why I'm confused about the reactions. Like, did people think Goran was netting us like a first round pick or something, like a value? Like, he was always an expiring contract. So my thing on this deal is, look, you get Thad Young. He's going to play right away. He's better than most of the guys on the bench. And most importantly for me, he is a veteran who, as much as I like Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher, he's a guy you can trust in a playoff series, and that's where the Raptors are trying to head. This deal also says to me that the Raptors like where they're going. They think they're going to keep moving up in the standings, and that pick then isn't that significant to them. It shows that they have a lot of confidence. And the other thing I want to talk about is this whole tax stuff that a lot of people have been talking about. This is a money-saving move. MLSE is being cheap. No, don't visit Can-Am Tax. We're not getting paid for that. This is not a money-saving move. First of all, the Toronto Raptors were already under the tax, so they didn't have to do anything. They could have just bought out Dragic, paid him the full 18 mil salary, stayed under the tax. You can argue that, okay, but they wanted to add a 15th man and stay under the tax. There's other ways they could have done that, right? They could have traded Svi Mikhailuk or Utah or one of those guys for a second round pick if they were that desperate to get off money. Those deals would have been out there. You saw it last year with Matt Thomas and Terrence Davis. So this was not a tax saving move. This was a move because they wanted Drew Eubanks and Thad Young, and which we might get into if the Raptors make another pick. It brought them like $4 or $5 million under the tax. So now if they do make another trade, say for Chris Boucher, they can take on additional money. It opens up a lot more options for them. But they did not do this deal to save MLSE that $3 million, because at the end of the season, they were going to be under the luxury tax regardless, and they're going to get back around $17 million at the end of the season. So those two things I don't think correlate.
I saw that.
Anyone have last thoughts before we get to on-court fit?
I'm just not sure that's true.
No, go ahead.
What?
That it's not to save money.
Okay, but what part of it?
Well, I think like they didn't want to just straight up buy out Goran. It gets them well under the tax without like having to sign another guy. And I just think that I feel like Masai could have mastered something more if they were willing to go over that.
That's true. If they were willing to go over,
that's what I'm saying is that
yes,
it was the best available trade that does save them money. I'm not saying it's a straight salary dump, but
it doesn't save the money. If they did nothing, they would have been in the same position. But you're right; they could have done other deals and gone over the tax. But that's a whole nother ball game that we never thought they were going to do.
But I think that's worth criticizing, right? Because it still boils down to who the hell cares if MLSE saves $20 million or not, right? Like that's literally like 0.1% of their value. So it's like at some point we do have to criticize this for the fact that Webster and Masai were limited by them remaining under the tax.
Yeah, I'm not mad about that because I just think that the MLSE has proven that they will go over the tax and pay heavily if the team is contenders.
Yes.
But since they're not right now, I don't really blame them in a year like this for trying to stay under.
Can I just say, while we're being critical here, and I'm going to preface this again by saying, Masai is the Raptors' most valuable asset. I wouldn't trade I think Masai is more valuable than Scotty, Pascal, etc. I'd rather trade Pascal than trade Masai to a different team. But they might have bottled this Dragic situation. They might have bottled this Lowry situation. This kind of looks bad in retrospect. They had an asset in Lowry last trade deadline that they decided not to move at the deadline. They waited to move him in free agency. They got Precious back. They thought they could move Dragic. They didn't really get much for Dragic. Was this a misstep? Can we admit that this was a misstep in the same vein Bruno was a misstep?
No.
He misses. Everyone misses.
I don't think this was a misstep.
The Lowry deal?
The Lowry deal in general.
I disagree.
I disagree too. Because as much as people want to speculate, we never knew what was actually on the table.
Yeah, that's
at
what
the
it comes
trade
down
deadline.
to. Yeah.
So it's just impossible for me to criticize it.
The sign-in trades, you don't ever really get that much value when you know the player is going to free agency market. It's kind of like a gentle person's agreement. And so, and I think Masai has very high hopes for Precious. That's what all of this is about. Goran was just salary filler. I am disappointed. I really thought Goran was going to play. I really think he could have fit this team. I think if he had waited 6 weeks and saw that Malachi Flynn wasn't ready and Banton was going to hit a wall, that he would have gotten valuable playing time. And so that was a miss. But I think ultimately getting Precious for 2 more years after this made that trade worth it.
Yeah. Why don't we get to on-court fit here with Thad Young? First, I'll say this about Drew Eubanks, just in case people want to know. To me, I actually like that piece. He plays quite a bit for the Spurs. Pop really likes him. He's a traditional drop big, and he's a type of player that the Raptors actually don't really have, because as much as he's 6'9" and fits the description, he is much more of a typical strong, stout center who can actually body up guys on the post. Yeah, and he's a rim running big. He's not dynamic at all, but that's the type of player Drew Eubanks is. 25 years old. I don't hate the flyer on that one. But let's talk about Thad Young's on-court fit. Someone said that he's a player that has to have the ball in his hands and he's going to take touches away from other guys. How do you guys see Toronto using Thad Young? And honestly, actually, Adon, why don't you go, because you've written a whole piece about it. And yeah,
I said it a little bit earlier. I think, first of all, I don't really agree with the idea of many mouths to feed. That refers to guys that are volume dribblers and need to have the court set up in a certain way for them to be effective. I think Masai's approach has been have multiple creators and multiple players who can do different things with the ball. And Thad Young fits that profile quite well. He's not a great shooter, but he will shoot the three. I don't think Pop wants him to, but in Chicago, he was starting to. He has great vision. He can rebound. He's going to thump you with screens. He can, he can take the ball to the hoop without tripping over his own feet or just Aaron Bainesing it off the rim. He's a multi-tooled guy that you can put in the low, high post and in the corner if you have to. And so I think that's where the redundancy does exist right now, is that you have Scotty, Precious, Boucher all standing in the corner at some point, and that's not what you want as a release valve on the weak side. So that'll be interesting. But I think there's plenty of room for him to be incorporated with our 6 deep that we currently have.
Yeah, I think he reminds me a lot of what I believe Precious is kind of going towards as a player. Long physical attributes are off the charts. Like that is so strong. Thaddeus Young, people don't understand. Like it's not just the wingspan. This guy's a really strong player for his size, 6'9", left-handed. Like I said, he's a guy that the biggest thing for me, and I don't want to reiterate what I said before, but he's just when you have a very fluid athlete, of course, a little bit older, but when you have a very fluid athlete, high IQ, and all the intangibles are check. I've tried to do as much Thad Young intel as I could in this last hour, and one of the best attributes that apparently he has are his intangibles. He's a guy that has a wildly good work ethic, a good leader in a locker room, other than what he offers physically, and of course defensively. Everything off the court and in the locker room seems like just like a very good fit for the Raptors. Almost in his entire career, he ranged from like a 12 to 16 points per game scorer up until these last few years, where he's really just been a rotation player. And I don't know. I don't see why, for me, Thad wouldn't fit perfectly. I think they use him a lot like they do Precious. Use him as a screener, make him sit in the corners. I don't know at this point of his career, because I know with Precious, it's almost like you could see the Raptors trying to at least turn him into a viable perimeter shooter. He does sit in corners sometimes. And I've said before, if Precious is going to shoot threes, he better shoot them from the corners to start. And Thad Young is a guy who in Philly, he shot threes. In Chicago, he did. And then in San Antonio, I don't know if he's even had an attempted three this year, because I'm looking at his. He has
2 attempted threes per game.
Yeah, I want to say, like,
hasn't hit one though.
If you looked at this team, like offensively, anyone would say the biggest issue is not a lack of playmaking. In fact, they have playmaking almost at every spot, and I get that that's the philosophy. But the issue is that they lack shooting. There's a spacing issue. It's evident. And Thad Young, I get that he's good with the ball in his hands. I get that he's like a legit Draymond, but we have other guys who like are already playing that Draymond role. The reason like we talk about he's like a Draymond type player is like Draymond only was so effective because he played with these incredible shooters. Like you can't put Draymond on the floor with 4 non-shooters and have it be effective. Thad Young is a 33% 3-point shooter for his career.
This is why. Yeah, finish. Go ahead.
He's not a good floor spacer. I get it. I appreciate like he's an excellent creator. I love it. And I didn't know about the GPA stuff. I didn't like that's actually makes me like way higher on him. Like I love that he's a smart player.
He's super high.
Almost changing my mind. But like there's a shooting issue and this doesn't solve it. And that's
this is what's so fascinating about not only this deal to me, but about the Toronto Raptors team building philosophy is that they've completely eschewed whatever that word is, spacing for playmaking. Look at who they just took in the draft: Delano Banton and Scotty Barnes. They're all in on playmaking, and we've seen this year how you can work around spacing issues with really, really smart playmakers. You see Scotty Barnes make a high-low feed where there's no spacing on the court, but if you have guys who can make passes in tight corridors, it doesn't really matter about the spacing. Now, do the Toronto Raptors need more shooting? Absolutely. Should they probably trade one of these bigs for a shooter off the bench, a wing or a guard off the bench? I really hope that happens in the next half hour. But with just the Thad Young fit, it's fascinating to me because they're basically saying we want as many playmakers as possible at the court at any time, because even if the spacing isn't ideal, we're going to work around that with these clever high-low passes, these passes in tight corridors, these wraparounds, these baseline feeds, like all of these things. And OG, Fred, and Trent, you guys better save our asses outside of the perimeter because it's all on you three. I think that's fascinating.
One intangible I will throw in there is that I think Thad is a perfect mentor for Barnes and Precious. And so I think like that's, I mean, I don't know how much you're gonna get out of 4 months of that if that's all we get, but like that's a nice little aside.
Like, I just want to address this comment. I get this, and that's a good point. I get that this is the philosophy they're going for, but I'm allowed to say I don't agree with the philosophy to this extreme. You need shooting on the basketball court. Like, they're forced into playing Fred and Gary so many minutes because they're the only shooters that they have on the whole team, and Pascal. The reason the starters, like, you don't alleviate these starters minutes, especially those three guys, by getting bench guys who can create. You alleviate it by getting bench guys that can shoot, so you can play different lineups while maintaining the spacing. The reason Pascal plays so much is because they don't have other spacers. That's at least in my mind.
Yeah, and the obvious fact is that you're going to need shooting for a half court. What you're going to see is a lot of half court scenarios in the playoffs for the Raptors. This is where I'd probably redirect people watching to Louis Zatzman, who's the managing editor at Raptors Republic. He posted probably one of the best reads I've had in the last like calendar year on the Raptors. Just recently on Raptors Republic, you should probably check that out. And he detailed how they became a much better half-court team since the start of the new year, and how the Raptors were obviously their two strengths were, offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding. Raptors awful, but offensive rebounding and transition buckets were their two primary strengths as a team. And then since the turn of the new year, they've become a much better half-court team. A lot of that has been obviously because of the core guys like Gary Trent Jr. and Fred VanVleet. No problem at all, Louis. It was really good, man. And it's a lot of words.
How can you say really that good. Looking in the face of
a trader?
Two fucking writers. Louis goes on Yahoo and you're giving him props.
Yeah.
No, it's okay, Louis.
Yeah, okay. It's okay, Louis. I got you. These guys don't got you, but I got you.
But no, I think the point you're making about offensive rebounding is big.
Yeah.
They're doubling down, right?
Well, for sure. I think for me, guys, Thad Young, you look at his career stats from when he began his career all the way back in 2007. And then you see his prime was around, I want to say like 8 years ago, 2013, 2014, right around then. And then it's been a steady drop off, which is, again, totally normal for a guy that's aging like he is. Again, 15 years in the league. A lot of guys retire after 10, 11, 12 years in the league. He's been in it for 15, and he's still, I think, productive in the role that Popovich and gave him on the Spurs, and then obviously the Bulls before that, the Timberwolves. He's been on a ton of teams. I didn't even realize after the 76ers, it was the Timberwolves, the Nets, the Pacers, the Bulls, and then the Spurs, and now the Raptors. But that probably goes to show how many teams feel like they would need a Thad Young at the end of their rotation, right?
Yeah, and I want to ask you guys, like, which, obviously these trades are always based on these reactionary things, like, oh, he's barely playing in San Antonio, this isn't a good trade. Meanwhile, someone, I forget who, traded a first-round pick for Thad Young last deadline, right? Because he was killing it on Chicago. Is that true, or was he part of the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade? Either way,
wow,
his value was way higher at the end of last season because he had this unbelievable season in Chicago, averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds. He was over at cleaning the glass, 96th percentile assist percentage, 97th this year, 94th assist to usage. So this was a really useful player in Chicago, and then he went over to the Spurs, and his role got cut literally in half. So I guess the question then is, like, which Thad Young are the Raptors getting, do you guys think? Do you think like he has the same stuff he brought to Chicago could fit in Toronto, or do you think that like part of this was age and that's why he tailed off so much on the Spurs?
Can I just quickly say, from the Spurs perspective, it's pretty easy to see why his minutes were cut in half, his production was cut in half. The Spurs have a very young team. If DeJounte Murray's looked at as one of the veterans of your team, like, your team's pretty damn young. And then they haven't even really incorporated guys like Josh Primo, the Canadian, by the way, so shout out to him. They haven't really incorporated guys like that into the rotation fully yet. Like, those guys are still hopping back and forth between the G League and so on and so forth. But 24 minutes in 2020 with the Bulls. In 24 minutes, averaging 4.3 assists and 6 rebounds. So 6 rebounds, 4 assists is crazy to me. Like, that is, and a steal and almost a block. Like, that is crazy at the age of 32. So I don't think he's that far removed from that. That's just my personal opinion. It's easy to see why the Spurs would go, okay, you know what, Dad, we're only going to play you, I think, 10 or so minutes a game is what he was getting, 10, 12 minutes a game. And we're just going to roll with the young guys because, to be quite honest, for the Spurs, this is a year of development for them. There's no real reason for them to go, okay, we're going to trot out Dad for 20 to 25 minutes a game and see what we have and really try and compete. I think this is more of a development year, and that's comes at a cost for Thaddeus Young with the Spurs.
But in that same vein, you just mentioned the Spurs are making the wise decision to bench Thad Young so they can develop their young guys. Like, don't you think the Raptors should be doing that? Isn't that something we should be focused on? Like, don't we want to develop our young guys?
But we're in the 6th seed in the East, and the Spurs are terrible.
But what is the drop off between, like, I guess what I'm saying is, like, there was an option where these young bigs still retain their minutes and you could still get a piece in for Dragic if he just played a position that was more suited to the team. Like if he was a guard who was a shooter, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I mean, I've kind of explained my opinion on this from the beginning, which is like, if you get into the playoffs, that is more valuable to me than Precious playing an additional 5 minutes per game or Scotty getting an additional 2 minutes per game. If Thad Young helps this team get into the playoffs, get into a real 7-game series, I think that is important to their development of those guys. Like we've talked about, even when you're not playing, it's helpful to be in the film room during a playoff series. And Scotty is going to be playing. We know this. He's going to be playing heavy minutes. He's still the starter. Nothing changed with the starting lineup with this trade. Yeah, is Precious's minutes gonna be reduced? Yes, but this team has years to develop Precious. They have him under contract for 2-3 more years. So I'm not too worried about the immediate impact of Precious getting a few less minutes. I think the Raptors and Spurs are in pretty different positions, and I think this trade shows that because the Raptors are really betting on themselves here and saying, look, our first round pick is not going to be very good this year. We're going to keep winning, and Thad Young's going to help us win.
If we could just, so at the end of this trade deadline, if we could just get 10 very solid minutes from a rotation player, which I think you're going to get with Thaddeus Young. I don't know what you're going to get from Eubanks. Like Oren said, he's done a little bit of background on him. He likes him. But if you could get 10 minutes from a high IQ role player and 15 to 20, let's say you get rid of Chris Boucher in the next 20 or so minutes. I don't know. I'm seeing people in the comments. Again, we might be in that situation where people in the comments are posting fake trades again and doing that whole funny thing.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
But I like what I want is 2 guys, one that's going to play 10 or so minutes a game, high IQ. You got that with Thad Young. And then if you're going to replace Boucher, you go 15 to 20 minutes, whether it be a scoring guard, a 5. I don't know. Raptors are being linked as we speak with a lot of different players right now. But if you can get 2 guys that can contribute to this rotation and add to what the Raptors already have in what Nick Nurse calls the core 6 or 7 guys, that I think is a win at the trade deadline for the Raptors.
Yeah,
I just kind of follow what's going on in the NBA. Sorry, guys. I'm just
trying
my best. There's
clear.
A bunch of trades going on in the league right now.
I just want to make it clear. I'm still in favor of this trade over nothing. And I think we all feel that way. The people, even I think every Raptors fan reasonably would feel that way. No Raptors fan was like, I wish we bought out Dragic. Like, no one feels that way. Maybe a couple, like the really cynical ones. But I guess our point, or my point at least, is like, I would have rather had a guard. And we talked about this.
Yeah, what about Gallo, though? We also talked about Gallo, same position. Who would you rather?
I would have taken Gallo easily.
I'd much rather Thad than Gallo.
I'd rather Thad as well.
I just value spacing.
It's going to be very
really
interesting.
It comes down to what your value system is. Like if Kyle likes spacing and Gallo does that for you, and Oren and Adon like kind of like the system that the Raptors already employ with these long, disruptive guys who can add to what you already have. And I think for me, Gallo's a little bit slow-footed, but to be quite honest, when I watch him, he's a lot stronger than I would think. He's a stocky guy, and he doesn't get blown past as much as I think he normally would. Like I was watching him in the last couple Hawks games, and I was like, why aren't the Raptors just taking advantage of Gallo every single time down the court? And his strength does not allow
these guys to just blow past him like normal. Like, he's a slow-footed guy. You could even see it offensively. Shoots the ball obviously really well. That's what he's known for. But yeah, I'm like on the fence.
Gallo
Gallo comes with another year as well. Like, you get
Gallo's a super intelligent player as well, and very skilled.
Yeah.
He's slowed down in his years. Like, you're right, Sahal, like, he's so goddamn slow, and he still has the ability to keep guys in front of him just by
It's weird.
His positioning and his size and everything else. But he doesn't, like, if the Raptors have one guy on the court who can't figure out where to be on a scramble or can't scramble, the defense is frinked. And like, Gallo is not that kind of guy, right? Like, you just can't have one anchor and four dudes moving around. And this is again why I'm like not super high on Miles Turner either. Is like similar reason is that everybody's got to be on a string and in sync with this defense to be where Nurse wants it to be. And so I think Thad is a step slower, but he's more versatile in that he can scramble and he's long. Yeah.
I mean, this is ultimately a team that you get minutes under Nurse for playing defense and for fitting into the system. And those two guys are just like, Thad is not going to have a very hard time fitting into the Raptors defense, and Gallo would have. And then it's just about like, do you value shooting that much more than the drop off in defense, or do you value the passing and the defense? And I would go passing and defense. Like, yes, it's doubling down on strengths that the Raptors already had, but I'm like excited to see how far can playmaking and defense get you in the NBA playoffs. You know what I mean? Because they don't have a lot of spacing, and they're gonna, a thing we haven't talked about is the offensive rebounds. That brings even more of that to this team. So they're really doubling down on the strategies that have gotten to where they are. And I'll be curious to see if it works in a playoff series. I really don't know the answer. I don't know. My biggest thing is like, yes, transition is going to be limited in the playoffs. We know this, but offensive rebounding, how much do you guys think offensive rebounding can be schemed against and can be like taken, like reduced from a Raptors perspective in the playoffs? Or do you think that they can keep relying on it for points even in a playoff series?
I think it breaks both ways. I think if you out hustle players in the regular season, you will more often win those battles. And that's less so in the playoffs, because if you don't, you're going to get benched immediately and like teams are going to lock in. On the other hand, we have 3 out of our 5 players on the court at any time typically have a size mismatch. And so like, another reason why I like having OG or Pascal or Scotty in the post is if they're on the weak side and they don't have the ball, the guy guarding them is smaller and is battling them in the paint, and we're going to win those battles. So I think that at some level we do have a sustainable advantage on the offensive boards, but I don't think we can rely on it in the same way that we had earlier in this season.
Anyone else have thoughts on that?
My concern would be that it really affects the transition as well. Like, teams that can break are going to absolutely eat the Raptors alive if they have like adequate defensive, like personnel on the floor that can defensive rebound. I do want to address this comment. I keep seeing this. This is just untrue. Those Spurs games, like, people keep posting this stuff. Danny Green, Kawhi, Ginobili, Diaw could shoot.
Patty Mills
could, like, had spacing
Patty Mills
capability. Yeah, exactly. Patty Mills, even fucking Matt Bonner. Like, those guys, like, that was a team full of shooting and playmaking. It's not like, oh, the Raptors are just replicating the 2014 Spurs. It's like, that's just not the case. It's they're not a great shooting team right now.
No, yeah, I think that's their weakness still.
Yeah, my thing would be like, why are Raptors fans so like obsessed with experimentation? It's like we're like freshmen in college. Like, I want to see what happens when you put all playmakers on the floor in offensive rebound. Like, no, I want to see what happens when you put shooters on the floor with these other really good players and playmakers. That's what I want to see. I'm sorry, I don't. Maybe I'm too mature for you guys, but I want shooting.
As an immature guy,
6'9" guys all day, man.
Me too. As an immature man, it's just like the reason is because 25 NBA teams play the same way and 4 don't. And I like to be part of that 4 that actually are very unique and are different and are trying new things. Like, we know how most teams look, and I just appreciate that the Raptors front office is like, you could get so far doing this, but it's probably we're not going to go further than the other teams because we have no advantages. We have disadvantages in free agent market and stuff like that. So try something new. It's worth a try.
I mean, the Wizards are trying to replicate the Raptors clearly right now because they just traded their two combo guards, Dinwiddie and Aaron Holiday. Aaron Holiday went to Phoenix, and the bigger trade is obviously the Spencer Dinwiddie package with Davis Bertans from the Wizards getting traded to the Dallas Mavericks for Kristaps Porzingis, a guy that's honestly been in trade rumors the last week or so nonstop, like linked to the Raptors as well, by the way, Kristaps. It's weird. Guys, I don't know from the Wizards' perspective. I don't even know if they have a guard. And do they have a point guard anymore? Are they starting KCP at point guard? And does that guy still have an ankle lock?
They got Ish Smith, man.
Yeah, the Ish Smith disrespect
they do have
is real.
And Owl Neto.
Oh, I totally forgot about Ish Smith. So Ish Smith was part of a trade that sent Montrezl Harrell to Charlotte, right? So it was Ish Smith and Vernon Carey from Charlotte to the Wizards. And I'm pretty sure Ish Smith's been on the Wizards before. So this is his second stint. Could be even be his third. I don't know. I'm not an Ish Smith fanboy. But, yeah, there's so much things going on. The Charlotte Hornets got another rim running big. So Jakob Poeltl was the first one that they traded. They traded away, what was it, PJ Washington and a first. They got back Jakob Poeltl. And now they just got –
That hasn't happened yet.
Oh, that hasn't happened. Okay, so that was just a reported trade. So I'm assuming maybe
Montrezl Harrell was like the contingency plan for that trade.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, I guess Ish Smith is starting point guard for the Wizards. I guess
Neto is a guy I'd actually like to poach if we could. Like it seems like Wizards are just selling off whoever, and he'd be, if you want to, I don't know if they'd flip Flynn for him, but.
Yeah, this to me looks like a tanking type of move. Like I would bet you that Kristaps like gets shut down. Like if I was a betting man, which I am, I would bet you that Kristaps gets like shut down with like some knee thing for the rest of the season, and then they basically like got rid of Dinwiddie. They can tank like without upsetting the league, and they get an asset. That would be that's my interpretation of this.
Yeah. I'm looking at the rest of the team for the Wizards, and I genuinely think Montrezl, after Bradley Beal was announced out for the year, I think Montrezl approached front office and was like, get me out of here. I've only played for contenders, and that will remain so. So please send me somewhere where there's at least a minimal chance of us making playoffs. So yeah, he got shipped over to Charlotte, which is crazy.
I don't like this trade at all for the Mavs. I don't know about you guys, but like, why would you do this? Porzingis has had a pretty good season, and Davis Bertans, as someone just mentioned, has the worst contract in the NBA.
His contract is hell.
Like legitimately. And Spencer Dinwiddie's contract is also not good. It's 3 years at like 20. Yeah. So
that's not awful, you're trading, though, to be honest.
No, but neither is Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps is also 2 years left at like 30, but it's less years. So,
to me, all the best Mavs lineups were with like Kleba or like another big, not Porzingis, partially because they've barely played Porzingis because he's been injured so often. They get a shooter, in theory, Bertans, even though he hasn't been shooting well, and they get Dinwiddie, so they can like reasonably play like that, Brunson, Luka, Dinwiddie trio, like sort of the Raptors used to play those 3 guard lineups, like similarly. I'm down.
Do they have money to retain Jalen Brunson?
I don't know, but he's going to cost a lot.
Yeah,
I think they do. It's just a question if they want to or not.
Yeah. Would not be surprised to see another deal, though, because...
Is Luka Doncic their best defensive rebounder?
No, Dwight Powell. Got Dwight Powell.
Oh. Sure.
But yeah, it's true. They have a lack of just bigs now. Especially two-way bigs.
I mean, they got Moses Brown. Raptors favorite. I remember Raptors fans. I saw them clamoring for Moses Brown last year when we were going through the Freddie Gillespie phase. That was hilarious.
There's got to be more coming. And there's no way Dallas is just sitting right now with this, especially with like the Lakers like crashing and burning. Clippers have just stepped out. Portland's just stepped out. Utah's lost Ingles. Like, I feel like Dallas is going to do something bigger here.
I feel like that too because they have Brunson and they also have Finney Smith, also a restricted free agent at the end of the year. They cannot sign both of those guys. They can barely sign one of them. So one of those guys is probably getting moved before the end of today.
I have a
We know
question,
that trades are
guys.
going to move into like the next half hour still.
Would you guys take who's the odd man out for me completely looks like Trey Burke, who signed a 3-year deal in the offseason. Would you guys be interested in a possible Trey Burke scenario for the Raptors? I can't think of who else would step out because I'm assuming now the Mavs guard rotation, their backcourt rotation looks like Brunson, Tim Hardaway Jr., Luka, and Dinwiddie. So Trey Burke does not look like, I don't see where he's going to get minutes from, but I would like that. I don't know.
We should say just going forward, like the reasonable assets the Raptors have left are Boucher, Flynn, all those end of bench guys who are like basically nothings, like the Svies, the Utahs, etc. They can't trade their 2023 pick because it's protected, which means that the first round pick they can trade is 2024. So
trade
like
Boucher is going to New York.
Oh, no, that's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie.
Oh, it's Wojbomski. Fuck.
They got you. They got you.
Oh,
I saw that one too.
I said at what point in this show is this going to happen to us where someone puts a fake trade in the comments and we're gonna bite? I thought it would be me, but yeah. Trey Burke, guys, by the way, is on a very cheap contract. 3 years,
no, I
$10
wouldn't.
million.
I wouldn't mind it. He's a better backup point guard than the situation we have. Before we go back to the Raptors, do you guys want to do the James Harden deal?
Ooh, probably the biggest
because
deal
we should
today.
probably talk about it. Who won the trade? I'll actually pull up the actual trade, but who won the trade?
Oh man, this was a big one because there was like rumblings of this trade as we approached the trade deadline, and James Harden is a guy that's been linked to Philly for a very long time, even as a member of. And now guess who runs the Philadelphia 76ers? The former Rockets GM, Daryl Morey. So he traded away, as you can see from the Wojnarowski tweet, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, who's a very valuable member of the 76ers rotation, Andre Drummond, 2 firsts for none other than James Harden. I know a lot of people immediate reaction was like Nets won. Oh my goodness, you get Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Drummond, and 2 firsts for Harden. Oh my gosh, because I just feel like Harden is just that one guy that just gets shat on all over the league. He's that one all-star who like the last 5, 6, 7 years, oh my gosh, empty stats, doesn't do anything, never win a ring like that. I'm personally a fan of James Harden. I think his fit beside Joel Embiid is going to be incredible. And now the starting lineup of Tyrese Maxey, Harden, Thibault, Tobias Harris, and Embiid, like that is a really good blend of offense to defense. Like that is really, really good. You have one of the best playmakers in the game in Harden, also one of the best scorers in the game in Harden. Maxey, who's like an ascending talent for the Sixers. Tobias, who can get you a bucket on any given day. Thibault, who's like arguably the best point of attack defender in the world. And then you have Embiid, who's like MVP level. I'm not ready to say who won the deal. I'm not, and I know it's a lot of people are going Nets, but I'm not ready to say who won. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, to me, I think the Nets won pretty handedly. Harden was a free agent in the summer. They could have lost him for free to Philadelphia for nothing. They get an asset out of it. I actually really like Simmons' fit there. Like that sort of like Masai goes crazy over these like long, rangy defenders. KD and Ben Simmons as like a forward pairing on defense is like mind-blowingly incredible. Ben Simmons has never been in a situation that suits him. He's always been playing next to a low post big. He's never been in the spot that really suits him. I get that he's like a whiny baby, ran himself out of Philadelphia. I'm on board. I think I would say that the Nets are like the favorite to win the championship after this trade, honestly.
Damn. Holy, that's with Kyrie not playing at home?
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see that situation. I don't know. I'm not convinced that Harden is really going to move the needle in Philadelphia. Like he still has to play himself into shape. He's still not in shape.
I'm retroactively suspect of whatever injuries Harden had because, like, you know, that could have all just been BS. but I feel like he's just so close to being one injury away from being utterly useless. And now Philly's the team that's fragile. They do have Maxey and Harris, I suppose, but like if Harden goes down, like I'm shocked they didn't get Patty Mills out of this at least. I feel like Brooklyn won this trade like by and far like away than Philly. They got deep. Simmons is an elite defender. That's all he has to do on this team. He just has to play defense. Brooklyn's way more versatile now. They have picks moving forward. Simmons is young. Like you get this disgruntled POS off your team. Like it's just there's so many ways Brooklyn wins this trade.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree that Brooklyn wins this trade, and I'm like the lowest on Ben Simmons that you'll ever find. Like I think he's the most criminally overrated player, and he has been for years. And yet I still think like this graphic is a little bit misleading. They also got Andre Drummond, who's just better than LaMarcus Aldridge. So that's a great starting lineup with great depth. Like if forget, the who won the trade question is really difficult because if James Harden carries with Joel Embiid Philly to just one championship, even if he's terrible after that and he signs this long-term contract and he ages terribly, it doesn't matter. If they win one championship, Daryl Morey did his job. But if you were to ask me between these teams, if they played in a playoff series, who's the better team? Let's assume Kyrie can play and let's assume KD is healthy. I'm going with the Brooklyn Nets.
Damn.
Would you
like
take
I'm
Philly?
the highest. It seems
You
like
would
I'm the highest on James Harden. I don't know.
No,
For me,
I'm high on James Harden too. I just think the pieces around are still bad. I still think, look at that starting lineup. Danny Green and Tobias Harris, they do not inspire a lot of confidence in me. Like Maxey's good, but he's still really young, never been in the playoffs.
I don't know if you start. I don't even know if you start Tobias because I feel like, sorry, not Tobias. Danny Green.
Yeah, fair.
I think you probably put Matisse in there. Matisse has had a really good year thus far. I don't know. I just feel like people are very low on Harden, a guy who, yeah, he's not shooting his best percentages this year, but a lot of that has to do with him being stuck in the shithole, honestly, that is Brooklyn right now. Kyrie's playing every few games. KD's out with injury. I feel like Harden, and this is like a bigger macrocosm. Is that a word? What's the opposite of a microcosm? This is like a bigger representation of how people have been viewing Harden his entire career as just some guy who can just score, trash at defense, and that's really it. Like, no, we're looking at one of the best scorers of all time, one of the best playmakers of this era, a guy who in a down year is averaging 22 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds. I don't know. I just think you pair that with an MVP candidate and a guy in Tobias Harris who's a damn good player in this league, Tyrese Maxey ascending, Tybal. I just don't think the 76ers took an L here like most people want to say. I don't. I don't think Harden's the same Harden as 4 or 5 years ago. I don't, but I still think he's an all-star level player in this league, and it's very similar to the Dragic deal, where it's like Ben Simmons wasn't playing for you, so you were getting nothing out of that. They had to get rid of him, and the fact that you get Harden, Ben Simmons has been linked to guys like Buddy Hield, like these last few weeks. So you got James Harden out of it, and I don't know. I just feel like that's very good. And by the way, their rotation players aren't awful. Like Korkmaz is a good rotation player. I think he is. I like Danny Green off the bench. I think Niang isn't a bad rotation player. I don't know. I think you go eight men deep, and 76ers have one of the strongest 8 men in probably the league right now.
Okay, but what is Harden's signature playoff moment for you? He doesn't have one. He doesn't have a signature playoff moment. He's flamed out every single postseason he's ever been in. He's like I hate to use this because it's such a cliche, but he is a serial choker. I'm not interested. Like his best playoff moment might have been last year playing through that injured hamstring with KD. Like I'm just not a believer. I don't think he's a good player, like as good as some people seem to think he is. I don't know. I love this for the Nets.
I think you have to give him a little bit of you got to give him a little bit, like some leeway, because James Harden for a very long time was by himself in Houston, essentially as the one superstar there, where they ran an isolation heavy system that literally relied on him more than probably any other player in the league. His usage was at an all-time rate. It was very easy to scheme against James Harden in the playoffs. The one year he gets a serial winner in Chris Paul, who obviously I call him a serial winner, even though he hasn't won a championship, but a guy who goes anywhere and they become an incredible team. I said years ago, if Giannis gets a hold of Chris Paul, they're winning the finals their first year. And he got Drew Holiday, who I think isn't as good as Chris Paul. Very good player, essentially all-star level player. But you get Chris Paul in Houston, and he crumbles to injury. And let's be honest, a lot of people think that if Chris Paul was healthy, you probably beat the Warriors that year. So I don't know. I just feel like he's kind of getting the short end of the stick. It's tough for me to be like James Harden is an awful playoff performer without adding any of the context into it. I just think it's very easy for a guy in the regular season like James Harden to just bust out 36 to 40 points every single game. But in a half-court setting in the playoffs, it's difficult to just continuously do that when teams have 2-3 days to prepare for you between every single game. I don't know. I just feel like the whole playoff performer thing, I wouldn't say is a total myth for Harden. I just think if you deliver a little bit of context with it, you kind of understand why James Harden has a lot less success in the playoffs, minus the year that Chris Paul, or the 2 years Chris Paul was with him.
I agree with that. He's been kind of played into the ground, but he also has flopped in the playoffs so many times that it's like it's a fair wonder, I guess, but this is like going to be one of his last chances to prove people wrong. But, with Embiid there, the hope is kind of Embiid shoulders so much of the load that they're not going to have to play James into the ground to get to the playoffs, and that once he gets there, he'll still have some energy to save these games, kind of games when Embiid doesn't have it. James can now, because James is the number 2 option there, if we're being honest, right? James is only going to take over when he has to and when Embiid doesn't have it. So I think in that way, it's a really good fit. But like you said, Kyle, he has very few opportunities left to prove the haters wrong, because it's been so many times that he's not going to get that many more opportunities to prove himself in the playoffs.
We should say the deadline is the deadline is passed, but trades still get filed late. The only reason we know about any trades now is nothing's been really officially announced through the league office. Everything's been announced through Woj or Shams, who have sources within the organizations. They don't know everything. There'll still be trades coming out now at post deadline. That doesn't mean there'll be trades for the Raptors, but in general. So just because it's past the 3 p.m. deadline doesn't mean we're finished here. But
Boston Celtics just got Diaz back, by the way. That's just a little side note. They sent away Dennis Schroeder to the Rockets just to rot away in Houston. Wow.
And we should say Ennis Freedom Cantor.
We should bring up the standings here in the Eastern Conference, because at first glance, the Celtics had a good deadline. The Nets had a good deadline. Both teams that are behind Toronto in the standings. Looking sort of ahead, the Cavs picked up LeVert. I didn't agree with the move, but I think it makes their team at least marginally better. The Sixers, I think, have improved. So the Raptors are kind of in a weird position here. The teams ahead of them immediately in the standings got better. The teams immediately behind them in the standings got better. I mean, given what we know now, where do you think the Raptors finish off the top of your head, Aiden?
Ooh. Down.
You're asking me?
I'm asking anyone. You just looked eager to answer.
That's a really good Eastern Conference.
I think they finish 8th.
Really? I'd go the other way. I think, let's look at this. The Bulls got worse because of injuries. The Cavs got worse because of injuries. The Sixers got James Harden, so they got better. However, that fit could take some time they lost a lot of depth, first of all. No backup center now, no Seth Curry. James Harden's going to take some time. But sure, the Sixers, they'll probably finish above the Raptors. Celtics got better. The Nets got worse as far as right now, right? Because Kyrie can't play and Simmons can't play. Like
Yeah, but
Simmons is
Harden-
not stepping in tomorrow and playing games for the Nets. He
That's
will take
true.
a week or two before, and then I'm very curious to see what he's looking like. But I don't expect Simmons to look like himself for a few more weeks.
We should acknowledge that in the Nets circumstance, they are getting KD back. I mean, the reason like this huge slide that they're on is not coincidental. It's because the best player in the league, or one of the best players in the league who plays in their team, is injured. So, maybe it takes a while for Simmons to adjust, but then it goes the other way. They were at the top of the Eastern Conference with KD. So,
I need you guys to do something for me really quick. March 10th. It's a Thursday.
I saw that. It's going to be a big one.
Open up your schedules. Everybody watching, open up your schedules at 7:30 p.m. because that is the day that Ben Simmons returns to Philadelphia. I genuinely don't know if he's actually going to play. And I don't say that as in a joking manner or anything like that. I know a lot of people are going to find that funny or whatever. But I say this, because I say this with the sense that, okay, Ben claims that obviously he's been dealing with some mental health issues. And whenever someone says that, you have to take their word for it. And I think playing in front of the Philadelphia crowd clearly has a lot to do with that. So I don't know if they play him. Maybe he's out with a hamstring injury that just pops up or something. I'm not sure. But March 10th, which is a Thursday at 7:30 p.m., the Nets fly to Philadelphia and play in Philadelphia. And that's going to be Ben Simmons' first game playing in Philadelphia in how long? Since what, June of 2021? Was it? Or May of 2021? That's going to be crazy. Back to what your question was, though. Where do I rank the Raptors? Adon said 8th. That's ugly, man. I don't know. I think you're low on them.
Can I say 5th? I'm saying
I'm going to
5th.
say...
Because Adon, you're muted. Adon, you're muted.
Adon is muted, yeah, so he's just talking to himself. Let's see when he realizes that he's muted. Oren, so if you have them 5th, who do you have dropping to 6th?
Who do I have dropping to 6th? Well, I think the Cavs and the Bulls are both one of those two teams, if I can hedge here. And then the Raptors have a really easy strength of schedule going here, and I'm just not that scared of, other than the Celtics, who I think got better. I think the Nets are really going to have a little trouble here, like in terms of the regular season, to get all the pieces on the same page. So not a lot of teams behind the Raptors scare me, and the Cavs and the Bulls are the two that I would say one of those could easily fall. And look, we're talking about 3 games here. It's not like a huge thing.
Good. No, I just wanted you to set the bar because I have them 4th.
Wow.
I have the Raptors finishing 4th in the East and getting home court advantage, which I don't even know will be if that'll be an advantage for the Raptors. I genuinely don't know. We'll see what happens in Ontario.
Hey man,
around that time,
February 24th, 50% capacity, right?
Yeah, man.
Can be good.
So we'll see. Hopefully, we're at 100% by the time playoffs roll around.
Yeah.
I have them 4th.
This is worth addressing in regards to the Thad Young trade. There were always going to be bigs available on the buyout market. Moses Brown is probably better than what most people expected, at least better than what I expected. But that's another reason why it made sense to solve the guard problem through the trade deadline and then pick up a big for depth in the buyout market, because bigs are always more abundant in the buyout market. And Moses Brown would be great, but they're currently rostering 5 centers. It's going to be way too much. It doesn't make sense.
We are at 3:11 p.m. Eastern time, 11 minutes past the trade deadline. Like we said, some things are being announced just literally as we speak. Like Adrian Wojnarowski just tweeted a few minutes ago that there's no deals for the Knicks, no deals for the Lakers. Jeremy Grant staying with the Pistons. Like we said, the Schroeder deal. I don't know what's happening with Chris Boucher. I'm assuming that the Raptors are keeping him. I don't know if Raptors fans are going to be mad about that because he's been playing out of his mind lately. But hey, no, it looks like no Chris Boucher. He's not moving. Looks like the Raptors are keeping him. No guard is incoming, so Kyle's going to go to bed really pissed off tonight. No scoring guards. Aiden's obviously going to be pissed off as well. It is what it is. I don't know.
On the note of scoring guards, every year there are teams who don't maximize the value of their players, and I just don't ever understand it. It's like Memphis Memphis had Tyreek Evans, and Memphis is going nowhere, and he's on an expiring, and they don't trade him. And then like this year, you got guys like Eric Gordon and whoever else are on these shit teams. It's like, how do you not find a deal and extract some value? It just seems like bad management to me.
The Raptors are apparently $3.75 million under the tax, exactly according to ESPN. And all I'm gonna say is Trey Burke's cap hit is around 3.4 million. So that's all I'm gonna say. We could have, second rounder, Raptors second round, not the Pistons one, because we know that one's gonna be a high one. Just saying that Trey Burke deal could have got done, or maybe, I don't know. That's a player I would have been interested in.
I'm a little disappointed if the Raptors don't make a deal here, which it doesn't look like they are, because I've said all season that like I don't really see them re-signing Boucher, and now they just traded for Thad Young, so there's no way they're re-signing both of those players, right? So yeah, you can talk me into like maybe they'll sign and trade one of them and sign the other, but how wasn't there a way to trade one of those players for a guard? Like you're telling me there wasn't any. If you're not going to be able to bring both of them back, and you're not, why didn't they just trade one of those guys for a guard? Like one of those guys, Malachi Flynn, get a different guard in the system. I'm also not happy that Malachi is still here because I think the Raptors have given up on him. So why is he?
I'm
why is
sending
he
that
coming
clip to
back?
Eric Flynn. I'm clipping that and I'm sending it to Eric Flynn's Facebook.
Eric Flynn's
message.
not happy either.
Oh man.
Yeah. What I'll say is like I'm with you, but I'm going to take it a step farther. I wish Thad Young was a guard because I actually don't know if Boucher should be traded. He's the one piece off the bench that makes sense. Like, and I don't think that it's like, oh, that's a good point. I don't want that dude. Then.
Oh, he's unvaxxed? See, but then I don't know, guys. Like, we're gonna have to start citing. Like, we're gonna have to do the whole bibliography thing if we're gonna make claims like that.
Oh, he made the decision. Ben recently made the decision to get vaxxed, probably in like an effort because he knew he was going to be traded to the a New York team. Figured like, let me get vaxxed up. I will say, like, in regards to the Nets situation, Harden is going to come across as a villain of forcing himself out of another team, forcing a team to give up all these assets. Like, this is on Kyrie. He refused to get vaccinated, let his teammates down. Harden was disappointed. It was obvious that he was disappointed, and he had to leave because the team wasn't up to snuff. Like it's a shame that Harden's gonna I don't like Harden, but even I feel for him that he's gonna receive this type of backlash because it's not on him. Like, how would you feel if Adon refused to get vaccinated and couldn't podcast, or only podcasted away games?
I'd fly out there to Victoria and I'd give him a piece of my mind. That's how I'd feel.
They're right. Trey Burke is not vaccinated. Damn it.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah. No, I mean, not the deadline I think a lot of people were hoping for, especially considering that there's not a lot that can happen in free agency from a Raptors perspective. Not the sexiest deadline, but like we kind of talked about in the standings, I think the Raptors became a better team, albeit just around the edges. And one thing we actually haven't talked about is like Thad Young is a veteran, and I really think this team could use a veteran presence in the locker room. Like Goran was kind of supposed to be that guy, and it didn't work out. But right now you have Fred VanVleet and Pascal as the only two vets on the team, and as good as they are, they're like 27-year-olds, right? You need more guys to hold young guys accountable. You need more maturity in a room. As much as I think Fred is an amazing leader, I think you can't expect to have playoff success with a bunch of young guys and then Fred and Pascal. So I'm not mad about the age of Thad Young. I think he's going to fit well into this team. I think he's one of those guys you can trade for halfway through the season and it won't take him that long to adjust because he's such a veteran player. And
Can I have a rebuttal there though? Like people keep talking about on Twitter and hear he's a valuable veteran piece. Like Fred and Pascal won a championship. That's more than Thad's done in his playoff career. Fred and Pascal are have been in the league for 5 years. They're on their second and soon to be third contract. Those are veteran players. Those are the cornerstones of the team. It's not like we're the Houston Rockets and let's get someone in the door. So what's his name? Kevin Porter Jr. isn't talking to Johnny Dang about grills on the bench. We're not at that state. We need we have adults in the room. Like we have championship winning veterans in the room. I don't
Yeah,
get
but
what
only
the-
two. That was my point. We only have
But OG
two.
won it, like OG's old and mature. Like
He's not old. OG's like 24, 23.
in NBA
and
terms, though. He's on his second contract. He's like an NBA veteran. That's fair to
OG's
say.
he's a kid though.
Okay, fair.
He's a
but
kid at heart, but I get what you're saying, Kyle. I'm gonna quickly mediate the situation because you guys are not gonna stop this between you two.
Yeah, I just think like they needed more age. If like they accelerated their timeline.
They needed more
this
IQ,
year.
Oren. Let's just say it because okay, I'll say it because if we get slandered, it is what it is. You know what? It is what it is. Because now Chris Boucher is in Toronto, and it looks like William Lou's finally going to get that interview he's been dying for. So good for you, Will. But with all due respect, if you have a front court rotation of Chris, Kem, Precious, I don't want to be rude, and I'm not going to name names, but two of those guys lack IQ. They just do. They lack basketball IQ, and one of them's not Kem. Sorry, Aiden. I'm very sorry. You're muted, but I'm sorry.
You calling
But
Boucher unintelligent
I'm not calling him
basketball player?
unintelligent. I'm just saying there's times where you look at this, you look at Chris and you look at Precious, and you're like, that's not the basketball IQ that you would want. To be quite honest, they make really stupid mistakes sometimes. They're good players. I think they're good players, and they fit on the Raptors really well. But you add a high IQ guy in Thaddeus, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think that can be turned into a bad thing. I just don't. And people are going to take that as an insult, but not all players are perfect. You can have a really, really good basketball player who lacks an IQ, and that's just the truth. I mean, people are okay with tweeting it, but when I say it live, everyone's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe Sahal just called the guy dumb on the court. Like, I'm not calling him dumb on the court. I'm just saying he's dumb on the court, but yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you're kind of saying this. More or
It's
less.
that and Kem a safety blanket for Chris and Precious in the playoffs. That's what it is, essentially. Yeah.
I just don't
You
think
guys
I just don't think they could get much else.
Yeah.
I think it's just what it comes down to. It's like if Derek White cost a shit ton, Eric Gordon didn't move. Like if you look at the salaries that were available to us, there weren't really that many that were actually feasible. I think people are complaining that we're overanalyzing this trade. Whatever, it's the only Raptors trade. That's what we do. But I think to simplify the analysis is that like this is probably the best they could do without expending too much, and I think that's just the bottom line.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by the way that Montrezl Harrell went for so little to Charlotte. Vernon Carey and Ish Smith. Montrez is a player I probably would have liked for Toronto, like just another dog in there that you can just throw in at the 5. Super, super aggressive around the rim, good on the glass. I just like the energy Montrez brings. He's probably one of the most energetic players in the league. I'm kind of sad that we didn't get a player like that. Obviously, Jakob Poeltl was linked to us for how long? Did not get Jakob either. We knew the Spurs asking price for him was going to be super high because maybe they just didn't want to get rid of him in the first place, and everyone else just wanted him. So they were like, you know what? Price is high. It is what it is. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys see anyone that got traded to a different team that you probably would have liked for Toronto, considering who they were traded for or the package they were traded for?
That's a good question.
Yeah, at first the Derek White trade was like made me rethink my take on the Thad Young trade, but then the details kept coming out, and it turned out that Boston gave them a very lightly protected first and a pick swap in 2028. So that's a lot for Derek White's 4-year big deal. So honestly, no, like there weren't a lot of deals made today where I was like, I really wish the Raptors jumped on that one. I think a lot of guys didn't get moved who we expected to get moved. When you think of like Eric Gordon holding place, Miles Turner holding, even Rashawn Holmes didn't move. So I can't think of any.
I would have liked to see Jalen Smith from the Suns. He basically got moved for nothing.
That's
He
true.
got moved to Indiana for him and a second round pick for Torrey Craig. The Suns are acquiring Torrey Craig again. I don't know. They've done this before. I don't know what they expect this time. But like he was a valuable piece. I would have really liked to see Jalen Smith. I don't know how they would have made it work, but I think Jalen Smith would have been my. And we had spoken about him, so it's like not like he was like Thad Young was a true off the radar pick. Jalen Smith, we would have we were interested in him.
We really didn't miss out on too much. I think like that 4-player trade where DiVincenzo goes to Sacramento, I think that might have been the one. I don't know them.
I would have loved DiVincenzo.
Yeah,
for
I don't think Milwaukee's trading with us, but I think that's maybe the
Yeah.
trade where I'm kind of like, man, I would have liked to have gotten in on that. Even, like Bagley went for cheap. I even like around the edges would have liked Josh Jackson. I feel like he really kind of fits the mold of what we're looking for as far as like somebody who can kind of do stuff and is athletic and long. So if there was something I was going to kind of look at like with a little bit of envy, it might be this 4-person trade.
Yeah, the only thing is like Goron's money would not fit into this trade. It's too much. So you'd have to give up Boucher, and I don't know, other than Dante. Yeah, but other than Dante, I'm not sure I want any of these players enough to give up Boucher.
I agree. Yeah.
The Kings made out well here, though.
So then, can I put you on the spot? Would you put Chris Boucher in a supposed trade getting back at DiVincenzo?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I just don't see how they're going to sign him and Thad Young. And if that's the case, then why trade for Thad Young? You know what I mean?
They're not trading for Thad, or they're not signing Thad Young unless it's veteran minimum. I don't think.
I mean, we'll see what he does in a Raptors uniform,
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I think I could definitely see them signing Thad beyond this year. But again, not also Boucher.
So completely besides this point that we're talking about right now, did Enes Kanter change Kanter to Freedom, or is Freedom his middle name? Because why did I just get a Bleacher Report notification saying Rockets waive Freedom? I thought it was
Enes Freedom. I think he did change Freedom.
He kept Kanter though. It's like sort of how like in Latin or in Spanish, like you'll have 2 last names, like your mom's and your dad's. He has his dad's and then Freedom, I guess.
Rockets waive Freedom. That's the best headline I've gotten all year. That's hilarious.
But he's free now. Free to do whatever he wants now, I guess.
I mentioned earlier today, is Nickeil Alexander-Walker done moving? And then I read an article that a Utah Jazz beat writer wrote about Nickeil and his fit. And I was like, and then also about how he's hearing from the Utah Jazz staff that they love him and they're looking forward to developing him. I was like, let's just trade him one last time and have his final destination be Toronto. But no, apparently, Quinn Snyder's in love with him. So, yeah, I mean, not the biggest Utah fan, but sure, they have a great player development staff, so I'm happy for him.
Orlando's another team. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Like, Terrence Ross is just burning money over there. Like, Gary Harris is expiring. You've given up on Bamba. Like, do something. People are desperate for stuff right now, and I think it's just like it's negligent management.
To me, the other thing this says about the Raptors, though, is that I think they have more trust in Delano and Flynn and Utah, in that group to actually contribute for the rest of the season, because they know that they still need a guard, and yet they didn't do anything for it. So maybe that just means that they think that these guys are developing quickly enough that, Delano has given them some decent minutes recently. People have speculated on Twitter how Thad could play with Flynn and give him a good role threat, which he's never really had coming off the bench. So maybe Flynn, he gets revitalized. This is the optimistic scenario, but the Raptors, it feels like they're betting that one of those guys can pop for the rest of the season, because if they were really desperate to get guard help, they could have got it, like we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty generous assessment, generous to the Raptors organization. That's what I'll say. Because if they weren't playing up to this point, I don't know what would give you the indication that they have a lot of confidence in them going forward.
Yeah.
I think the funniest part about this entire trade deadline is probably Trae Young's father, because he had the nerve to tweet this. I don't know, Chris, if you could bring it up. His at is Rayford Young. So Ray Ford Young. He tweeted, "Y'all can think or say what you want, but my son, Trae Young, shook up the whole Eastern Conference after last season's playoff run. Got every team scrambling. All good though. He's just 23, just getting started. That's a promise." Sir, your son is 10th in the East. He's 3 games out of 8th.
He's literally one of the worst defenders in the league, like in its entirety.
How did you manage to take that net 76ers trade and somehow include your son in there? I mean, I'd understand if the Hawks were 4th in the East, 3rd in the East, maybe even 5th in the East or 6th. They're 10th. What are you doing, Rayford Young?
Yeah, like I said this when we were playing the Hawks, but it's like I've never met a Hawks team, a team with so much confidence. They beat a Knicks team that hasn't changed and sucks this year, and then they beat a Sixers team that fell apart completely and like had an emotional breakdown that ended in a divorce so ugly that the star player did not play the next year. And then they took like a couple games off the Bucks and basically like bowed out. Like this is like the most overrated team in the Eastern Conference. I do not believe in the Hawks at all.
Is he trying to say that all these teams made trades because they're scared of the Hawks?
Yeah, well, I think it's also like the Hawks like destroyed the Sixers, like that we shook that whole organization up. Like,
well, that they did ruin Ben Simmons' career in Philadelphia. I'll give them that actually.
Oh my gosh.
Trae Young did destroy Ben Simmons' existence in Philadelphia, but that's about it. That's about where it stops.
I mean, he kind of ruined the Knicks, I guess. But the Knicks
were just overachievers.
They just weren't good. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's hilarious to me that Rayford Young believes that Daryl Morey was on the phone with the Nets going, "You know what? I'm so happy we got this trade done. I'm so glad because there's this one guy on the 10th seeded team in the East. His name is Trae Young. They're 3 games out of 8th, and I am absolutely afraid of Trae Young and all those guys down there. I have to make this trade. Thank you for Harden. Have a great day." There's no way that I need to see if he was ratioed, first of all. Do we have okay, it says it there, 715 quotes. As soon as I get off this live, that's going to be 716.
I have a question. What does officially make a ratio? Like, I get that it's like more quote tweets than likes, but like, or not more, but like the ratio is like, what's the ratio to where it's actually like he's ratioed?
There's no like ratio, but 715 quote tweets.
So it's just the amount of quote tweets being high.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Replies, but once quote tweets became a thing, it's like people love windmill dunking on others. Yeah, it's I can't wait. I'm about to pull off a 720 windmill once I get off this live show.
To get back to a more serious topic, do you guys think there's any chance that the Raptors get a guy in a buyout? Like, is this at all an attractive team given where they are, or
their roster is full?
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
That's a good question.
Is that they don't have space to get a guy. It'd be like maybe
Can you buy out Fiji?
No, Fiji has a player option next year. You can't buy out Fiji.
I have a question. Do you guys? So we're talking about the buyout market. Do you guys think Dennis Schroeder is going to get bought out from Houston? I don't know. Obviously, it'd be nice for him to just show out for Houston and then in a contract year try and get as much money as he could, right? From his perspective, but also what's going to get him a bigger contract? Playing in Houston and averaging however many points, or getting bought out, possibly going to a team like Toronto and playing meaningful playoff minutes where people can see you on the big stage. I don't know. Do you guys think he's going to get bought out? Who knows? That could be an option.
Yeah, I mean,
he could, but but like, would he choose Toronto?
Well,
I think that's another question. Yeah.
Yeah, even then, it's like the rotation's already pretty like tight as it is. I don't know if he's even cracking the rotation. Schroeder is not really what this team's looking for. Also, I think it's funny, like the guy who fumbled the bag harder than anyone else in the league in recent memory, Schroeder, like financially after like not re-signing with the Lakers and like opting to get in free agency and like taking the MLE in Boston, like he's gonna be the mentor to those boys in Houston. Like those guys are gonna be like, I'm not listening to you. You've lost yourself $20 million a year because you've been listening to your agent. That's the worst mentor ever.
It'll be interesting. I think I guess we don't have a roster spot, and if we did, I don't know who's coming to us. They just announced that Eton Moore got waived as by Orlando, and the Kings waived Jamius Ramsey, who I've always kind of like kept an eye on, like spunky combo guard kind of dude. So, but I don't know that we have any space.
That's a good one. Now let's just pull up memes. Let's just.
I do love that one though. That one is cool. Who pulled that up?
I like this one too.
Yeah. That's like a pretty official account that tweeted that one too, which makes it even better. Like he's getting dunked on by whistles, like verified accounts.
Yeah.
Orlando Magic, Adon, obviously you I don't know if you mentioned this already, but I saw that you mentioned in our little chat that they waived PJ Dozier. I think he's a fit for Toronto in the sense that maybe you sign a guy like that and then you just try and develop him. I don't know if Dozier would be okay with essentially being in the developmental stage at this point in his career. I haven't watched a lot of Denver. I know
he's coming off an ACL as well, so he's not playing right now, as far as I know.
Yeah, I am seeing that
I like him for sure.
Yeah, he's played roughly 20 minutes a game the last couple of years for Denver, so been a part of their rotation.
He's like a smaller Precious Achua kind of like kind of throw out there and cause chaos.
6'6" point guard. Wow, nice. Won't be the biggest point guard on the team, surprisingly enough.
Yeah. What else happened? Did we go through all the trades, guys? We talked about Porzingis. We talked about the Harden trade.
Yeah, we did the big ones.
Ibaka with the Bucks.
Good for Ibaka. That's my only thought. Like
Harden picked up his $47.3 million option, so he's going to be with the Sixers next year.
He picked it up, put it on his back.
That was probably part of the deal.
Casual
Is Toronto better or worse than Boston?
We're better.
Yeah, we're better.
I think we're clearly better with both teams fully healthy.
Yeah,
I agree that they're better, but I think Boston improved more than Toronto did. I think this is a pretty lateral move for Toronto, all things considered, and Boston got a lot better. Just getting Freedom off the roster is a big win.
It's not lateral, Kyle. We literally didn't have a player playing, and now we do. It is.
You're right.
It might be like a 5-degree incline, but it is an incline.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see a rematch of those two teams in the playoffs because more than anything, I want to see how Fred and Pascal have developed as offensive players and how they struggled so much in that series, but how would it look this time around? I would love to see that series again.
Oh no, man. I don't want to see the switchability of the Celtics again, man. I just Grant Williams on
our
Pascal
kryptonite in the playoffs, but no, man. OG's gotten better. We got Scotty Barnes in the fold. I think we're better than them now. Pascal's gotten better. Fred's gotten better. Like
they just got Daniel Tice back. Like I just.
Dude,
he killed us.
We're ruined.
He did.
You know who's the Daniel Tice killer? Thaddeus Young.
Yeah, and OG, small ball OG.
Oh my gosh.
The Raptors, they're hilarious, man. They just have 6'9" guys who could pass, and a lot of them. A whole lot of them.
A whole lot, yeah.
Yeah, like if you thought we were done pre-deadline, we're only getting taller and more playmaking. Like we're only getting worse, okay? We're only getting worse of what like the whole league hates us for. So let's go. I'm down with it. I'm going to talk myself into this move.
Is this a good place to leave it? Does anybody have anything else to say?
I mean, I gotta head out. 3:30
was my time to go. So
yeah, I think we are all ready to head out. But Bobby Webster is talking to the media at 4 p.m. If people want more content, I'm sure that'll be streamed over. Are we going to stream it? Probably not. Potentially check the Raptors Republic Twitter, but I'm sure it'll be streamed over at Sportsnet if people want to listen to that one.
Mhm.
But
Thank you to everybody for watching. We had
Yeah.
a consistent 300-ish.
Live viewers for this entire show, which was pretty cool to see. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. Like we said, we did this
Last week on Thursday, it was our preview show.
and then this was obviously the live trade deadline show, and we got just as many people. So the fact that you guys are giving us your Thursday afternoon means a lot. We appreciate it. I have some work to do, so I have to go, but we appreciated Oren, Adon, Kyle, myself, the entire Raptors Republic team, Chris, Howson-Jan, who's working as our producer in the background, Don Yang, who's not here, who's helped us throughout wrap up this entire year.
Hell yeah, Don.
Yeah, we thank you. We genuinely do. Like the stream if you can. We've seen tons and tons of comments. Hopefully we highlighted your comment during this show. Like, subscribe. There's a ton, guys. When I say there's a ton of Raptors Republic content being posted almost every day, if not every day, on our channel on YouTube, there really is. So you should subscribe. Click the bell. I know it sounds very cliche because you probably hear 1,000 people say that, but yeah, click it because I've never said that to you. Click the bell. Do all of that. We appreciate you guys more than anything. We will see you guys tonight. Right, there is a game tonight, the Houston Rockets game.
undecided if we're gonna do the show tonight.
Okay, so
but
undecided
every other
so far.
Raptors game going forward, we all have big days today with the trade deadline, so we're not sure we can get the people, but we'll be back on Saturday.
Everybody keep slacking out there. Shout out to Sockers. They need more.
They need more love.
They need more love.
Yeah, we always like put these guys on a pedestal who are really hardworking, but
yeah, what kind of life is that?
It's boring. It's a boring one.
Yeah.
Slack away.
All right, guys.
I should go
time
outside
to wrap it up.
before
Time
the
to wrap
day-
it up
before the
and,
sun is gone.
Time to wrap it up because I'm about to go buy this Daddy's Young jersey. On,
Oh,
Raptors
hell
Day.
yeah. Oh.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for watching.
All
We
right.
appreciate it. Take care. Have a great Thursday and stay blessed. Bye.
Bye.